Let's talk about double pointed needles. There's times in your knitting when you need to knit a really small circumference and you can't use a traditional circular needle. Hi, welcome to Sherry Knits. I love knitting and I want you to love it too. I'm going to show you how to cast on to your double pointed needles, how to knit in the round so you can do those tiny projects. Let's get started. Let's take a look at how to cast on and knit using double pointed needles. If you're making a pair of socks or mittens, maybe finishing off the top of a hat or working the sleeve of a sweater in the round, you'll need to do some small circumference knitting, and double points are a really good way to do that. So you want to grab your double pointed needles and yarn. Most double pointed needles come in a pack of 5. I typically only like to use 4 of them. This 5th one I sort of consider an insurance needle in case I lose one of these. So I'm going to set the 5th one aside. I like to use double points where I'm knitting a triangle, knitting in the round, but it's a triangle shape. And I have the stitches around the 3 needles and I use a 4th to work around. I find that gives it a little more structure, makes it a little easier to control. And so that's how I'm going to show you today. But if your pattern calls for using all 5 needles, then you would just have your stitches in a square and you would take that 5th needle and knit around. It would be an easy adjustment. But today we're just going to work in a triangle. So let's go ahead and cast on our stitches. I like to cast on to 1 needle and then slip the stitches onto the other needles. So I'm going to cast on 15 stitches for easy math. So we have 5 stitches that we'll put on each needle. And I'm just going to do a simple long tail cast on. Your pattern might suggest a specific cast on, or you can just do your favorite cast on. And long tail cast on happens to be my favorite. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, and now that we've got our stitches on there, I'm going to take another needle and slip 5 stitches onto the end. It doesn't matter which end you slip from. You can take from either end, but you just want to make sure that you're slipping straight across. We call that slipping purlwise. And what that does is it just moves the stitch across without changing the orientation of the stitch. So it's important if you slipped it knitwise, you'd be changing the direction that the stitch is sitting on the needle, and you don't want to do that. You just want to move it straight across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and now we have our stitches evenly divided. I like to work on a table when I get set up, or my lap maybe, so that things have a little more structure and I have more control. So I'm laying it out so that the stitches aren't twisted on the needle and there's no twists in the joins. And then I can pick it up with my left hand. I'm going to hold both the beginning where the yarn is and the end of the cast on stitches. And you'll notice that the yarn is on the needle that's to the right. So you want the working yarn to be attached to the needle that's on the right. Take that 4th needle and go right into the 1st stitch over here, and then pull the yarn from the right needle to connect, and that is how we join in the round. It's that simple to join in the round. Knit that 1st stitch and then continue knitting. So we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we've knit all the stitches from this needle onto this needle. Now I'm going to move everything to the center because I'm done knitting with this needle, and then turn to go to the next one, take the empty needle. Now I can push all this up because I'm going to be knitting with this needle and this needle, pulling the yarn from the needle that's off to the right because that's where the yarn's attached. Now, I'll show you what I like to do. A couple things is have the stitches in the center of the needles that I'm not knitting with. I'm really only just knitting with this needle and this needle right now. And then I also like to have the needle that I'm knitting with on top. So you'll see I just repositioned it. This is the needle, the stitches I'm going to be knitting, and this needle is sitting on top of this one and this one. So that all I'm doing right now is holding this needle. These others are just hanging there. So I'll go into that first stitch, wrap, pull it through. And don't worry too much about pulling things tight on that first stitch, but when you go into the second stitch, what you're going to want to do is give it a good tug before you wrap and knit that stitch. And what that will do is help you to pull tight at the joins. You only need to do it on the second stitch, and then you won't have gaps in your knitting where those joins are. So now again, I've knit the stitches from this needle onto this needle, and so give it a little turn. I'll adjust so that I have my working needle on the top, so you can see it's on top of this one, and the yarn is coming from the needle that's on the right. And then I'm going to take the needle, the working needle, and just enter. So you can see that really the only two sticks that I'm holding are the two that I'm working with. The other ones are just kind of hanging out below. And since I have wooden needles, they're just a little bit stickier, which some people don't like, but for this, it's actually better because then your sticks won't fall out of the stitches. And then I've gone all the way around. So now I'm ready to do my second round. And I know I've gone all the way around because here's my tail where I started. And so I just reposition. So this stick is on the top. And I enter. And then I'm ready to work around. Now, if you're knitting and the phone rings, or for some reason you have to put your knitting down and you do it in the middle of a row, when you come back to it, just remember you'll know where you are and what direction to go, because the yarn, once you get going, is always attached to the needle on the right. And so you don't want to pick it up and go this way because it's attached to the yarn on the stick on the left. So here it is, needles to the right, there's the working yarn, so I'm ready to go. And this is how you work a small circumference in the round on double pointed needles without getting frustrated. Good luck with your project. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel by clicking the button below. Thanks.